Hello and welcome to Power Talk. My name is Victor Mwila. Imagine a Zambia where businesses, industries and even households have the power to choose where they get their electricity from, just like we choose mobile network providers. Now, imagine that in the midst of an energy crisis, urgent measures are being put in place to keep the lights on and industries running. Today on Power Talk, we discuss two recent developments in Zambia's energy sector, the newly launched electricity open access, and a little bit on the emergency tariffs. What do these policies mean for you, the consumer? Will they improve electricity reliability or will they bring new challenges? I introduce my guest to you shortly after this break.
Zambia News and Information Services, your media and communication hub. Need a professional space? We offer state-of-the-art studio hire for sound and film productions. Experience comprehensive news coverage and in-depth features that bring you closer to the stories that matter. Capture your moments with our professional photography services, perfect for events, portraits, and more. Looking for eye-catching visuals? Our graphic art and design team will elevate your brand with custom solutions. Host your next event with confidence. We provide high-quality conference systems and public address systems tailored to your needs. Contact us today at zanismarketing@gmail.com or call or WhatsApp 0773 809 040. Zanis TV, the People's Channel.
Welcome back. If you are just joining us, this is Power Talk. Today we are discussing the electricity open access and a little bit on emergency tariffs. I am now joined by the Director, Corporate and Consumer Affairs at the Energy Regulation Board, ERB, Mwiika Malindima. So Malindima, I would like to say thank you so much for accepting the invitation to come and be with us on Power Talk today.
Thank you for inviting us. It is always a pleasure for us to come and give more information on the reforms and the developments in the energy sector.
The energy sector, talking about where we're coming from, the background is that we are coming from, an El Nino-induced drought, and we've gone through a lot of challenges, shortages of electricity, industries being hit hard, and so many other issues. So today we want to look at a recent framework that was launched, the Open Access Framework. We would like you to break down for us as a regulator, you are the people behind this. What does this really mean when you talk about the Open Access Framework?
Yes.
If you break it down, why has it been introduced in the first place? As you explain, you break it down for us to understand. Help us understand, and why has it come into place now?
Thank you. So, like you rightly put it, the country went through a very difficult time. In fact, we're still pushing through this period because the effects are still with the country. We thank God for the rains that are coming, and eventually we are hoping to see a difference in how things are happening. The country has been heavily reliant on hydro power generation for electricity, for our consumption, both for industry and also for domestic consumption.
About 80% or more, and that's a lot.
That's a lot for any country. So diversification has therefore become necessary. And the government has been working frantically to ensure that there is alternatives that are coming on board, so that should there be another, El Nino in future, a drought like this, the country is not totally now reliant on hydropower, but rely on other alternatives such as solar, such as geothermal, and other sources that we could use to generate electricity for a country to have continuous progress, economically and have daily life continue without disruption. So now, I'm happy that you ask about the question of what open access really is. This is open access to electricity. when we're speaking open access at the regulator, the ERB, we also talk of open access for the petroleum, but that will be a discussion for another time. Today we shall address the issue of open access to electricity. Just last week, the Minister of Energy, Honorable Makozo Chikote, did launch the open access to electricity framework for the market. What that means is that now the network service providers and the distribution service providers, such as ZESCO, such as CEC, Copper Belt Energy, and the Northwest Electricity Corporation, these are the big network service providers and distribution service providers in the country, will now have to open access for others to use their assets, which is the distribution network and their network, you know, to participate in provision of electricity. And in short, really, what open access then does is to give a non-discriminatory access to third parties who are independent power producers and also independent power traders who have come on the market through the reforms that the government has put in place to participate in the energy sector. So if you and I have the capacity, you know, to produce power, what we lack at the moment is the system to distribute it to a buyer. Yeah. So there is supposed to be a willing buyer, you know, and a willing seller. So for instance, I am able to produce power, maybe through solar, or maybe I'm even able to import it from an external, outside Zambia source. I may, as it were now, not have a system to distribute it to my willing buyer. So then I will approach ZESCO, I will approach NWEC, I will approach CEC to assist me to transmit it to the buyer. By the way, I should mention to you, Victor, that this system has been there, but it has been at the discretion of the asset owners, that is ZESCO, NWEC, and in the moment CEC. But with the promulgation of the open access framework by the minister last week Friday, now it means that the companies, the asset owners, are now compelled to allow the power traders and the independent power producers to wheel the power through their system to the willing buyer. So now you don't have to go to ZESCO, you don't have to go to NWEC and wait for them to give it to you. The only challenge that might come out, in fact, we shouldn't call it a challenge. The only thing that must be there is that we should have capacity on the network. So if, say, ZESCO uses, has a system that has a capacity of 600 kilowatt hour, and they're only able to use 300 kilowatt hour, this independent power purchaser or trader or independent power producer has a 300 or a group of them can now transmit 300. ZESCO will have to open up that 300 because that is the capacity that is open for these to use. So they will now be able to come and use it. Before now, this was, for instance, at the discretion of these network and distribution service providers, but now it's open. That is the law, that is the regulation that is there, and participants only have to follow the rules laid down in the regulation, what has been promulgated from the ERB, and also what is in the grid code and the SI itself on open access.
So regarding independent power producers, do you think this is something that they have to take advantage of? Is it going to lower the cost of capital? Because we hear stories that this is a capital intensive sector.
Thank you. It's a very good question. Obviously, electricity is not an easy or cheap product to produce. You must have capital, but as we know, there's been so many framework, financiers are coming on board, And now the market is there. There is a huge market. We are in a current situation where there is a deficit, meaning a deficit only provides for the fact that there's somebody who needs and there is not enough provision for the demand. So for the independent power producers, as long as they do get their financial close, they get their agreements with financiers, and I know that there's a lot who have set up. Just again, within this week, the ZESCO and the Minister of Energy were signing about 29 independent power producers, 29 power producers signed power purchase agreements with ZESCO to bring on that power and provide it to the customer. So there is opportunity. I think that every challenge brings you a silver lining. The silver lining that is in this issue that has come with the deficit is that now the market has been opened for more players to come, so that once they produce this power, with the ready market that is there, I think the returns are a guarantee.
Well, for me as a consumer and viewers out there, our interest, you know, when we're looking at this, is, are we going to see the cost of electricity coming down as a result of this framework, or it's just one of those policies that come in to support businesses? How do you explain to me as a consumer that this is a good thing for the country?
And it's a good question that you ask. Eventually, the benefit must accrue to the consumer. So what this open access will do is that it's going to bring on board a lot more players than they currently are in the electricity market. We speak largely of ZESCO, NWEC, CEC, as we've mentioned. But the independent power producers and the independent power traders are largely the ones who import. The independent power producers are those who have been brought on board through, if you know, the microgeneration law that allows people to generate power up to 5 megawatts and be able to then export it onto the national grid and sell it to a willing buyer. Now, this selling to a willing buyer has now been afforded by this open access, because if you're an independent power producer, you are going to go and negotiate maybe with a mine or maybe with any other consumer. It's going to be a small industry, it can be a community, depending on how you close your conversation, your business agreement. But ZESCO, NWEC, CEC will then provide you the transportation at a fee, obviously. There's a small fee. It's called a wheeling fee that you pay because you are transporting it through their network. But there will be no restrictions as long as there is capacity on that network. Now, the question you really did ask is, what are the benefits to the consumer? So with more players on the market, that brings on board competition. So the one who will now start fetching it at a price that is more affordable will then cause the rest of the market to start following, because the consumer will always look for a cheaper price. So eventually, and with the amount of power coming on the grids, there in future will be a time, and this is a certainty, that there will be affordability coming, because competition will be brought on board as a result of the open access. So yeah, customers will benefit from this.
Okay. Let's talk about the concerns about fair access, you know, to these networks. How does the framework address these issues?
Good. So first of all, you know that the electricity market is very technical. It is also complicated, but it is being simplified by the frameworks that are being brought on board. There are companies that have been known to be vertically integrated. They will generate, they will transmit, and then they will give it to the customer. But now, fairness has been brought on board because they've been put into departments, if you like. And I'm trying really to simplify it in such a way that if the only thing that you are able to do as an independent power trader is to buy electricity from somewhere and push it on the network, the only thing that will be there because of the law the open access law protecting you is that there will not be any discrimination for you. What will be there is for you to just follow the laid down regulation, the grid code regulations, and also the open access regulation. But you will be facilitated by this law to push that electricity. All you have to show is that you do have the capacity, and also you will have negotiated, you will have found out whether any one of these on whom you want to push your electricity amongst the asset owners have the capacity, open capacity. And to do that, the ERB is in place to see that there is fairness. And if there is no compliance, the ERB will take to task the one who is not complying. And also, in the long term, it is something that would affect the consumer, you know, and you do not want, going into the future, consumers not having electricity because there is a turf war for those in the electricity sector. So there is somebody in the middle. The referee, if you like, would be then ERB. In future, there's going to be what they call an independent supply management operator that would then be looking at how the players are effectively dividing how they play in the energy sector of the provision of electricity to the consumer. But as it were, the regulator is playing that role now. Obviously, for national purposes, ZESCO has been the dominant player. And I did say that they'd be vertically integrated. But with the framework, ERB is working closely with ZESCO to ensure that there's compliance. And that is why today, because this open access, there was pre-access before the open access. There's already players in the market because of the framework, energy framework laws that have been there promulgated by the government. There's already been players who are importing power today and supplying it to consumers through agreements. But the only trick here is that they are having to go and discuss with players such as ZESCO first, you know. But now, open access has only left that to the fact that, for instance, ZESCO, NWEC, a CEC must only have capacity, must show that there is capacity, excess capacity for which the players, independent power producers, or the power traders can utilize. I did give an example of the 600 kilowatt hour. And if, say, for instance, in that 600 kilowatt hour, that's the capacity for transmission and distribution. And the asset owner is only using half of it, 300. The rest of the 300 can then be, by competition, open access, the markets can come and use. So it is a fair system. We are in a challenge, and as a country, we cannot be shooting ourselves in the foot. We must open it up so that the consumer then can receive that power, and also for our progress as a country on the economic side.
Briefly, how will these players like ZESCO CEC and the Northwest Energy Company, these who are already in place and have the network, what will be their benefits? And I'm sure that before the policy coming into effect, there were consultations that were done.
Yes. Well, the benefits are in twofold. In fact, there's more benefits. There is no loss. First of all, a guarantee is that there's no nationalization here. The law only compels them to open up the excess capacity, and you are not biting into what they can provide. If they can provide 100%, it is still okay because the country will still benefit from the provision. But if their access is 100% and they're using 50%, then by all means let them open their 50%. Now, that's already a benefit. The second benefit is now you open that 50%, and the ones who are passing the electricity through your network are paying you a charge. There's a small fee that they're paying in order to transport their electricity to their buyer, to their willing buyer. So that fee that they are paying will then allow you as an asset owner to extend, you know, your network to even places that you weren't, because maybe in Wapula province today, there's now many more people who are now in micro generation, and you want to tap into that market. You use that as capital that is coming to you to go into those places and lay out more distribution, networks, so that you receive the power and those become your new customers. So the benefit really is there. Now you even become a marketer, other than just generating and transmitting. You start looking for businesses. So the benefits really will accrue also to the current asset owners, such as ZESCO, NWEC, and CEC.
Yeah. Before we, just briefly, before we hasten towards concluding, we've been dealing with emergency tariffs in this country. The first one, your 3 months, were last year, and then this year you approved another 3 months. I think we are a month down.
Yeah.
Where are we? Are you happy with the progress ZESCO is making?
Well, thank you. And it's important, obviously, to clarify issues of the emergency tariff. You know that the emergency tariff came after the ARB declared an emergency in electricity in April last year, 2024. After that, the national utility, ZESCO, was failing to meet the demand because of its inability to generate power. So it was failing to meet the national demand as a result of the coming out of the drought, the El Nino, that brought us, the deficit. So the emergency tariffs were effected then in November 2024, and that was the first time. We did the first 3 months, and ZESCO came again to request for an extension of another 3 months, and that was also granted. This is done in order to alleviate the challenges that the power utility is facing. ZESCO needs $15 million every month to import electricity into the country. But it's the same ZESCO that is affected by a lack of generation. At the time that the tariff was being given in the initial, the deficit was at 1,300 megawatts, about half of what ZESCO would have ZESCO generates in excess of about 3,000 megawatts. But then more than half of it was the deficit. So ZESCO needed then to start filling in that gap, and they needed that financing because they had lost financing because of the drought. So the ERB then did give them that emergency tariff, did grant the application, and that happened. So what came from that, Victor, is that there were complaints in the community, people saying, okay, now the tariff is too high, how do we manage? But when you look into the actual tariff that was granted to ZESCO, about 5,300 households were actually received a reduction, because amongst those, they use less than 200 units per month. So everybody who uses less than 200 units per month, in fact, it's everybody, the first 200 units that you buy in the month, they got a reduction. And most of the people in the country are in that bracket that they use less than 200. So for them, they are not feeling any
not affected by
they are not affected. In fact, they've gotten a reduction. They've gotten a reduction.
And that's the information that perhaps has not been going out.
Yes, and that's and then the benefits also accrued to about 57,000 small businesses. The ones who own salons by the roadside, barber shops, the welders and so on. They also received a further a discount of 100 kilowatts hour. The changes only start affecting those who use 500 megawatts and above, because they have got the capacity to pay for it. And usually these are now and the maximum demand customers who use in industry, for instance. Some of which have even gone to start buying what we're calling premium power that is being brought into the country by the independent power traders, who have been coming into the country also by the reforms that have been promulgated in the electricity sector. So there are benefits that have accrued to households. That is many customers. You know, I did mention here that almost 530,000 customers.
Just briefly, on the emergency tariff still, I think attached to the approval that you gave, as a regulator, you were looking at ZESCO increasing the number of hours providing electricity to communities. Are you happy?
Yes. Yes.
Is there progress in the right direction?
There is progress, that I can say, and I think that when as media we go and check with ZESCO, they will give you the way they are operating. From a regulatory point of view, yes, it was requested that condition to this extension is the fact that ZESCO should provide 7 hours of electricity, and ZESCO is adhering to that. Now, look, maybe there are instances where in the community, certain places are not getting the whole 7 hours, but they are supposed to produce up to 7 hours of electricity. There will be challenges because electricity is not a simple science.
So customers...
Yes.
Can customers come and complain to ARB?
They can come and complain to the ARB, and we will assist them to go and find out what the problem is in their respective areas.
Mr. Malindima, just your final remarks before we conclude.
So yeah, the open access regime that has been in the electricity that has been promulgated by government is here to open up the market and to bring in more players. You've seen that the government policy has really been to give and to open the market for business, for players to bring on board and start assisting to alleviate the problems that government is facing. So government may not necessarily be the only one to manage the deficit on its own. But in managing, government has opened up the space for players to come, bring in competition, and eventually reduce the cost of access for electricity in the long run.
I would like to thank you so much for coming to the studio. ARB has been prompt. You are always responding, and you are coming to participate in these discussions, and we really appreciate. We hope that that gesture will continue for a longer time than just now.
Thank you, and we are really happy to be here, and we are ready at any time you call us.
Well, viewers, that's it for today. Remember, electricity is not just about powering homes and industries. It's about powering dreams, livelihoods, and the future of our nation. The choices we make today in how we regulate and price this essential resource will determine how fast we grow as an economy and how inclusive that growth is. Until next time, I'm Victor Mwiika, and this has been Power Talk. Shalom.